Well, hey, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to the channel for today's installment of Open Mic, the show where the mic is open, the floor is yours. What are the things that you guys want to discuss and talk about? That's what we are here to do today. My name, of course, is John Campea. I'm the host of this show, and it's good to have you guys here. And just to let you know, there are two different ways to get a comment or question addressed on Open Mic. The first way is if you're watching this video one of the 23 hours a day that we're not streaming live, go ahead and use the tip link at www.streamelements.com/JohnCampea/tip. You'll find a link to that down in the description. Or if you are watching live right now, and thank you for joining us, guys who are here live, go ahead and use the super chat feature in the live chat. We're going to leave the super chats open for a little bit longer, and then we're going to turn them off. But we'll get through as many of those as we can before we got to turn them off. And it's good to have you guys here today. Had a fun show this morning. Me, Ray, Jonathan, and Chris. Not going to let you know. Going to let you know right now that I usually try to keep Open Mic to about an hour, but usually we go like an hour and a half or 2 hours. Today, I'm definitely going to keep it to an hour because I've got to get over to the theater and join Ray and Ann and a couple of our friends, and we're going to go watch Godzilla -1. Gonna go watch Godzilla -1 today. Very excited. And I'll tell you what, I'm not normally excited by Godzilla movies. Like I said on the show today, they remind me a lot of just like zombie movies. They're all essentially the same, but I think Ray's enthusiasm has been contagious. I am going to go into it with a little bit more excitement, I think, than I normally would have had, but Ray's got me excited about it. And yeah, and I'm actually now pretty excited about going to go see it today. So there's that. All right. Now, what I often do on Open Mic is we usually take a topic first and I talk about that topic for the first 15 or 20 minutes, but we're just going to dive right into it today and get right over to your questions. And hello to everybody. Oh yes, Matthias Roca mentioning Shogun release date is February 27th. I'm so excited about Shogun. It might be my most anticipated TV show of all time. I might not even be joking. That might be my most anticipated TV show of all time. I've been waiting. You guys who've watched me for a long period of time know I've always talked about, all the way back to the movie blog days. Hey, John, if there was a remake or something brought to the screen you'd like to see done again, blah, 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 blah. I've always said Shogun. Shogun. And if we're talking about comic book movies, I'd say Mystery Men. But Shogun is something I've been wanting for a really, really long time. All right. That down, guys. Let's get into your questions here, shall we? We're going to start off with D and Z, who writes, when does the book Destiny Desire Campea come out? I want a pre-order date. For those of you who missed it, I can't remember if that was today or yesterday, but I can't even remember what we were talking about, but I said something like Destiny Desire Campea. I can't remember what it was about, but keep your eyes open for it. If there's enough pre-orders, maybe I'll go ahead and write that book. All right. John Campea 2028 writes, seems any movie with overweight main character is more of a joke character. If the writing is good and acting is just as good, how much box office impact do you think would have if Ned played as Spidey and Tom played as Ned instead? Don't see much representation. I mean, look, I think the valid point in that is that you don't see a lot of overweight representation. And the reality is, there's a lot of overweightness in America. I mean, I've struggled with being overweight. I mean, I'm right around my ideal weight right now at 215, but I mean, you know, it wasn't that long ago, like a number of years ago, I was like pushing 240 and stuff like that. I mean, America is an obese country. It is. And it's funny that we don't see other than we see more overweight characters on television, I think, but in movies you don't. Now, the one thing that I will say though, is that with superhero movies, there is a bit of a standard, right? Because I don't think a lot of people are going to believe that somebody that looked like Jacob Bartolone, who played Ned, who, by the way, is in much better physical shape today than he was when he made those movies. But let's say you got Jacob Bartolone, who played Ned, in the physical shape that he was in when they did that movie, playing Spider-Man. I mean, I don't think a lot of people are going to buy that he could do the super agile, acrobatic sort of things, right? There's a lot of things that we associate with superhero characters are you know, crazy feats of physical fitness, right? So there's a little bit of a difference to that. Now, that's different if you're going to talk about romantic comedies or dramas or stuff like that. Then certainly there probably should be more representation of that on the screen. But in superhero movies, for the most part, when we're talking about people with super speed and super agility and super strength, I think our brains more connect to that when we see somebody who's a lot more physically fit than we are. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you're overweight or not. Like when we see Chris Hemsworth on screen, I'm in pretty good shape. But when all of us see Chris Hemsworth on screen with his shirt off, we're all like, I'm not that, right? And I think when it comes to superhero characters, we kind of want to see that. We want to see these people who are in much better physical condition than we are. So I think there's a little bit of a difference there for me. But, I think there's a good discussion to be had there, though. All right, next up. Culture Wars Diplomacy writes, Rookie had an episode about a review of a shooting by Nathan Fillion's character, which is usually not bothered with in a cop show. Any detail on a show where you know something about that topic, where you were impressed, they covered and or they got right? First of all, I remember that episode of The Rookie. I really like The Rookie, by the way. Anyway, with Nathan Fillion. But I remember that episode where I think he killed his first person. It was completely legit, line of duty, doing his duty, followed all the right rules. And still there was this huge process they had to go through. And I appreciate the detail for that. I think for me, having a law background, I think for me, one of the worst things we see in courtroom stuff in movies is when somebody, when somebody introduces a surprise piece of evidence in a trial, right? It's like, well, we happen to be bringing in this witness. And the opposite counsel is like, what? Right? I mean, that doesn't happen. That can't happen. There are rules about that. You have to, the other side has to know exactly what evidence you're bringing, exactly have to know what witnesses you're calling, all that kind of stuff. And I remember the first time I saw like some kind of movie or TV show where that was brought up, I'm like, yes, finally somebody gets that right. Anyway. So there's that. All right. Next up, we go into, Max Newmark, who writes, I'm looking forward to the Percy Jackson series. I can relate to Percy being dyslexic. Rick wrote, I never know how to pronounce Riordan, wrote the demigods have a form of it because his son is. I'd love to see more neurodiverse characters in film, TV. Keep up the great work. You know, somebody else brought that up the other day, and when I don't really often think about it, but since somebody mentioned it the other day, I remember thinking, yeah, you know what? You're right. I haven't ever normally given it a lot of thought, but now that you mention it, we don't see a lot of that. I mean, unless they're just like secondary characters or third level characters or, you know, something along those lines. We don't often see that. And it reminded me of, although it's a little bit different, obviously, about The Accountant, where Ben Affleck's character, I believe they had what they called high functioning autism. And I remember being like really taken by that because I just remember thinking, I've never seen that in a movie like that. I've never seen a movie where a main character had that kind of condition, right? It touched a little bit more like Peanut Butter Falcon, but actually Shia LaBeouf was more the main character, but still you see what I'm saying? So it would be nice to see a little bit more of that. If they can find creative ways and interesting ways to work that into the story, I think that would be really good. All right, next up. Oh, I lost my spot here. We are at BK Dan, who writes, John, totally agree with you about Wanda Breaking Bad. I saw hints of it in Civil War when she faced off against Vision. You locked me in my room. Yeah, see, but here's the thing, though, about Wanda. Wanda didn't break bad the way that Daenerys broke bad in Game of Thrones, right? So I said for years, you guys who watched me, you know, I said for years when Ann and I would do our Game of Thrones recap shows and stuff like that, I said for years, Danny is an asshole. Danny is a jerk. It's right there. Danny's Breaking Bad. Danny is going pure evil because she's already extremely selfish. Like, you guys see her being, this is all about her. She's Breaking Bad. They're making it obvious. And everybody told me I was crazy. No, she's not. You don't know what you're talking about. And then when she broke bad, everybody went, we never saw that coming. And I'm like, hello, I've been telling you this for years. But that's different from Wanda, right? Wanda didn't break bad. Wanda broke. Let me say that again. Wanda didn't break bad like Danny did, which was obvious to anybody who was paying attention for years. But Wanda didn't break bad. Wanda broke. Like, she was a character who had done nothing but suffered insane loss after insane loss, losing her parents, then losing her brother, then losing Vision, then losing Vision again. And then while trying to live in this idyllic place to kind of protect herself and whatever, and she's creating all these illusions, within that context, she then lost her children. And at some point, listen, every great supervillain story has at its core a place where that character just broke. Right? Some of the best villain stories are the ones who were heroes at some point and then like broke. And Wanda broke. And that's why I love the story of Wanda. I love her story. It's a tragedy. It is a tragedy. It's a Shakespearean tragedy, but it is a wonderful story nonetheless about somebody, like, what happens when you just suffer too much loss. And I really cherished it for that. So yeah, that's what I would say, BK Dan. I wouldn't define it as Breaking Bad so much as I would just breaking. You know what I mean? Anyway, Danito writes, did you hear Bradley Cooper say that he would rather have the Eagles win the Super Bowl than win the Oscar for Best Actor and Best Director next year? The fandom runs so deep with us Birds fans. It's not just Eagles fans, believe me. John, what would you give up? Would you give up 2 Oscars for the Leafs to win a Stanley Cup? Yeah, easy. No doubt. No question. Not even have to have a second of thought about that. Absolutely. Because you got to understand, unlike Bradley Cooper and all of you Eagles fans who are spoiled, because, Donovan McNabb took you to a Super Bowl. You didn't win, but he got you to a Super Bowl. You won a Super Bowl not many years ago against the New England Patriots. That was a great game. You guys got to the Super Bowl again last year. See, you guys are spoiled. All right. Eagles fans are spoiled because I am a Toronto Maple Leafs fan. My Toronto Maple Leafs have not been to the Stanley Cup in my entire lifetime. Not in my entire lifetime. The Eagles have been there at least 3 times in the last number of years, winning one of it. Leafs haven't even gotten to the Stanley Cup Finals in my entire lifetime. So, but yes, I would easily give up 2 Oscars in order to have the Toronto Maple Leafs win a Stanley Cup. No doubt. All right. Next up. Let's see. Danito also writes, did you hear Bradley Cooper? Oh, let's just sent it in twice. No problem. All right. MJF writes, some think so many films bombing this year proves the saying, get woke, go broke. Yet most films that made money had social commentary or diverse casting. The top grosser Barbie had both. What's the real reason for 2023's unpredictable box office, in your opinion? Whenever I hear somebody use the term go woke, go broke, I just immediately assume they're an idiot and I just tune them out or block them off my channel or never pay attention to anything they have to say. But here's the reality. You just accurately pointed out some of the biggest films of the year, some of the best, most successful films of the year are things that have either casting or whatever that has some diversity in it. Great. And of course, to these gaggle of morons, anything that has somebody who's not white or who isn't straight or who isn't a male, that's just woke. Even if they're just there, it's woke. Even if they're just physically there. Like, oh, because there's a black woman just there, that makes it woke. Anyway, And yet I can go on and say, well, here's a list of 7 films with straight white male leads and no messaging or anything that all flopped. Does that mean if you don't have woke stuff that you're going to go broke? Of course it doesn't. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of this conversation I had. It was an online conversation with somebody who wrote in and said, you know, people just got to understand. People don't care. The studios just got to learn. People don't want to see female-led superhero movies. The Marvels failed, and it did. The Marvels failed. Make no mistake about it. But the Marvels failed because they just got to learn that people don't care about seeing women-led superhero movies. And he said, you can call me sexist if you want. And I said, I'm not going to call you sexist. I'm just going to call you bad at math. Because the last time I checked, Black Widow, which was released during a pandemic, and that released day and date on Disney Plus the same time it was in movie theaters, still nearly made $400 million. During a pandemic, day and date, the same day it was released on Disney Plus, and people could have stayed at home and watched it for free. Wonder Woman made close to $800 million. Captain Marvel made $1 billion. So I mean, your math is just bad. Also, I said, Flash, Blue Beetle, Shazam. 3 recent superhero films, all with male leads and all totally bombed at the box office. Are we saying that people don't want to see male-led superhero films? Oh, of course, that would be a ridiculous thing to say. It's just those are 3 films that happen to flop, but you can't ignore that they've also had great successes. The reality is there haven't been many female-led comic book films, but a number of them have been crazy successful. So, I mean, but that's just the thing. People just want to pull out their political ideology and throw it at something whenever something doesn't go their way. So, I mean, it just is what it is. Okay, next up. We go to Justice for Rick Flag writes, Bonjour, mes amis. Have you seen the latest French version of The Three Musketeers? The one that came out like 3 years ago? Yeah. I find French movies mediocre at best. I can say that I am French, but this one is amazing. It came out last year and part 2 is coming in a couple of weeks. Wait, oh no, that was the trailers dropped like 3 years ago. I remember I saw the trailers because I think this is one of those films that it was intended to come out around or just before the pandemic, and the pandemic got delayed. Because I remember we saw the trailers for this like years and years and years ago. Well, not like 10 years ago, but like just a couple of years ago. And yeah, I mean, it looked great. I haven't seen the movie yet. I haven't had the opportunity to see the movie yet, but I remember watching the trailers for it and going, oh my God, like this looks like the Three Musketeers movie we've always really wanted. And I've liked a couple of Three Musketeer movies, but I remember thinking this looks like the one we need to see. So I'm going to watch these things definitely at some point here. All right. Next up, we go to BK Dan, who writes, John, I would contend that Endgame was more successful than Avatar only because Endgame, their push over 2 billion in one release, Avatar had to do it in 2. What do you think? No. Here's the problem, BK. Here's the problem. If you want to start playing the game of if you want to play the what about game, then you get into really muddy water and Avatar still wins. So you can just say, look at the box office results. The box office results are the box office results. Avatar has edged out Endgame. That's it. Now, if you want to start bringing up whatabouts, then you have to bring up the other whatabouts too, right? Avatar was a true single movie. Avatar was a true single movie with no mega stars in it, nothing like that. Whereas Endgame wasn't really a true standalone movie. Endgame was the culmination of a 12-year buildup with 20 to 30 major Hollywood stars in it. And a whole bunch of other extenuating circumstances that went into making it what it was. Avatar was a one-shot movie. At the time, it's had a sequel since then, but at the time, Avatar, one-shot movie. No big super mega stars in it, right? At least nobody who's a super big mega star currently. No 10-year buildup. No 17 films that came before it, all building up to that one thing. It just came out, single movie, boom. Whereas Endgame, on the other hand, had all those advantages that no other film has ever had. Name another film that's had 20, 30, 40 major A-list stars, or had a 17, 18, 19, 20 film buildup over the course of 12 years and blah, blah, blah. No other film has had that. It's whatever. But I still contend that despite the fact that no other film had those advantages going for it, you still count Endgame as it is. It is still the number 2 box office film of all time. So no, Endgame does not beat Avatar. I mean, I prefer Endgame. Well, no, I take that back. I prefer Avatar over Endgame. I prefer Infinity War over Avatar. Anyway, another discussion for another time. But the box office is what the box office is. The numbers are the numbers. Avatar is the number 1 box office film of all time. Endgame is number 2. And I've said this for a long time. Endgame, at some point, will get a re-release. It will. And actually, Michael Gonzalez in the live chat, reminds everybody about this too. But I mean, Endgame at some point will get a re-release, and it may very well leapfrog over Avatar for the number 1 spot. And you know what I'll say? I'll say that counts. That counts. The box office is the box office. The numbers are the numbers. If a movie's popular enough that if you put it in theaters again, people still go out to see it, then that deserves to be counted. And it does count. So I will respectfully disagree with you, my friend. Endgame in no way beat Avatar. Avatar beat Endgame. And at some point, Endgame will probably leapfrog Avatar. And then they will go back and forth over the next number of years, I'm sure. All right. Next up, we've got Unknowing Virgin writes, there's a rumor HBO is dropping a trailer for House of the Dragon at CCXP convention in Brazil this weekend. Can't wait. I wouldn't doubt it because a report came out the other day that the House of Dragon season 2 is done shooting, right? They're doing post-production on their series, sure, but the series is done shooting. Season 2 is done shooting. So I wouldn't doubt at all that they drop a trailer. Now, I saw a lot of people talking in the live chat that they've actually dropped the first Furiosa trailer today at CCXP, which is, I think next year I'm going to go. Next year, I've been saying this for about 3 years, but next year I think I'm going to go to CCXP at any rate. So I haven't seen the Furiosa trailer yet myself. We'll save that. We'll talk about it on the John Campea Show tomorrow. All right. Next up, we've got an anonymous viewer who writes, I've never gotten teary-eyed watching a game show, but in Squid Game, the marbles game really got me several times. Man, I never expected to get so emotionally involved in a freaking game show. I got to tell you what, listen, you guys know, when we were talking about this upcoming Squid Game game show, I mean, I was a little bit interested, I suppose, but it's like, really? Like, I don't know. I mean, I get why they're doing it because Squid Game was so popular, so you're taking advantage of that. I get it from a business thing, but I thought it was a little bit of a lame idea. I'm hooked on this show. 100% hooked on the show. Ann and I absolutely love it. And that marbles thing, man, that marbles thing was, bro, this show just fucking punches you in the gut all the time. That guy, yes, is saying, like, when the contestants found out they were going to be playing marbles, you can see those hearts drop immediately. It's like, this show is unrelenting. And I am incredibly invested in this show now. And like, I've had about 6 or 7 picks as to who I thought was going to win Squid Game, and all of them are out. So I'm constantly having to replace them with new picks as to who I think is going to win. But the show has been truly good. I mean, bravo to those folks. All right, next up. Just Your Average Jose writes, firstly, I'm not advocating for a World War Hulk movie. I agree what you said on that topic. My question centers Marvel circumventing the distribution rights. If Marvel wanted to tell the story, could they label it as an Avengers movie, i.e. Avengers World War Hulk? The answer to that question is no. So for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, Universal has the distribution rights to a Hulk, if any kind of Hulk movie, Universal has the right to then be the distributor of that movie. Marvel has the right to produce that movie, but then Universal would have the right to distribute it instead of Disney. Disney is not interested in having somebody else distribute their movies, except for their very unique and special contract and arrangement that they have with Sony with Spider-Man. Marvel produces the Spider-Man live action movies, Sony distributes those movies. But they don't want to have that arrangement ever again with any other thing. They had to do it with Spider-Man. They don't want to do it with anybody else. So the question that Jose is asking is, well, what if they just didn't call it a Hulk movie? Call it Avengers World War Hulk. Well, you can maybe get away with that semantics on the playground, but what will happen is Universal will immediately file a lawsuit, and that'll go into court. And then the court's going to want to see, okay, let's hear this movie. Let's hear the rundown of this movie. And once Universal proves that despite what the title is, this is clearly a Hulk film, Hulk is the central character of this story, then Marvel is going to have to give the distribution rights to Universal. So you can play the word game. Courts, they're going to be very clear that regardless of what the title is, the court is going to want to see, is this a Hulk movie? Regardless of what you title it, is it a Hulk movie? And if the answer is clearly yes, they're going to lose. So no, that's not something, unfortunately, they'd be able to do unless they kind of rewrote it in such a way that it really wasn't a Hulk movie. That Hulk is just a secondary or a third or a fourth level character in the movie. But then why you bother doing it if you're going to do that? You know what I'm saying? All right, let's go. Next up, we've got Tack, who writes, have you seen gameplay of the new James Cameron Avatar game? I have not. Coming out by Ubisoft. Cameron is directly involved in the story and making sure the game looks and feels like Pandora, and it looks incredible. Can't wait to pick it up next week on PS5. No, but I'm curious if they can make it. First of all, games on the PS5. I'm not a big console gamer. You guys know that. But games on the PS5 look freaking incredible. And if they can figure out a way, Tack, to make this game look that good, yeah, I'd be interested in at least trying it out, I must confess. All right, guys, listen, we still have a bunch of things to get through here, but before we do, we're going to take a quick second and thank a couple of sponsors of today's episode, our friends at Rocket Money and MasterClass. We want to take a second and thank a sponsor of today's episode, Rocket Money. Do you struggle to save money every month? With Rocket Money, you can quickly identify all those sneaky subscriptions that keep charging you month after month and cancel any you no longer use. For example, did you know that over 80% of people have subscriptions that they've completely forgotten about? It's too easy to subscribe to a free trial of something and then completely forget about it once you stop using it. That's why I'm such a big fan of Rocket Money. I've told you guys before that when I started using Rocket Money, I realized that I was still subscribed to a gym in another city I had moved away from 2 years ago. Also, my music service? Yeah, I found out I was still subscribed to 2 others. How much do you think you're paying a month on subscriptions? Most people think they're paying $80 a month, but they're actually paying closer to $200. That's why I use Rocket Money. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that finds and cancels your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills all in one place. With Rocket Money, you can easily cancel the ones you don't want with just the press of a button. With over 5 million users and counting, Rocket Money has helped save its customers on an average of $720 a year and $1 billion in total savings so far. So stop wasting money on things you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and manage your money the easy way by going to rocketmoney.com/Campea. That's rocketmoney.com/Campea. rocketmoney.com/Campea. We want to take a moment and thank the sponsor of this video, MasterClass. Guys, as a small business owner, I am finding myself having to be in negotiations all the time, whether it's with new contractors, vendors, or even agencies that represent our company. Now, I don't like to go into these negotiations unarmed, so I found the perfect class on MasterClass, The Art of Negotiation by Chris Voss, a real-life former FBI lead hostage negotiator. Taking this class on MasterClass made me feel a lot more equipped and confident going into all these various negotiations presentations I have to do on a regular basis. With MasterClass, you can learn from the best to become your best anytime, anywhere, and at your own pace. An annual membership starts at just $10 a month, and you get unlimited access to every instructor, thousands of online lessons, exclusive content, insight, and much more. There are over 180 classes to pick from, everything from filmmaking with Martin Scorsese all the way to cooking with the great Gordon Ramsay. In MasterClass, you will find practical lessons that you can apply to your life and work. So guys, get unlimited access to every class, and right now, as a John Campea Show listener, you can get 15% off when you go to masterclass.com/Campea. That's masterclass.com/Campea for 15% off an annual membership. masterclass.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at Rocket Money and MasterClass for sponsoring today's episode. All right, guys, with that down, let's get right back to it here, shall we? We're going to pick things up here with Darren Harder, who writes, one of two. Hey, John, been watching, listening since the early 2010s. Thank you so much, man. Good to have you here, Darren. And at this point, do you think there's any chance an Edge of Tomorrow sequel? One of my all-time favorite movies, and the song played during the credits is a banger. There isn't a movie that I want a sequel to more than Edge of Tomorrow. Figured my fiance is tired of me lamenting the lack of a sequel to her, so I thought I could lament to you. Also, the song Love Me Again that plays during the credits is a banger of a song. Have a good rest of your day. Listen, man, that is one of Edge of Tomorrow, Live, Die, Repeat, All You Need Is Kill. These are all titles. It should have been called All You Need Is Kill. That is what the title they should have stuck with. But anyway, Edge of Tomorrow sounds like a bad daytime soap opera title. But it was one of the great victims of having a horrible ad campaign. Like, we've talked about this a bunch on the show over the years. Terrible, terrible, terrible trailers. This is not the end. Like, it sounded like some kind of trippy, acidy, sci-fi, mindscape kind of, like, just looked boring and dumb. But the movie is great. Emily Blunt is so good in it. Tom Cruise is so good in it. I mean, the movie is fantastic. The great Brennan Gleeson is in it. The movie's fantastic. I love it. And they wanted to do a sequel. And they got close because it's not Louis Leterrier who was the director again? I keep forgetting, guys in the live chat, who was the director of that? I'm freezing on his name right now, but at any rate, getting their schedules all lined up was going to be very, very tricky. And, Emily Blunt tells the story about how finally the director, and again, I'm freezing on the name of the director right now, but the director and Tom Cruise got their schedules lined up. They're like, okay, we think we can make this work. They had an idea for the sequel. They wanted to make it. So they called Emily Blunt and they're like, hey, we're up for doing this movie. We got a script together now. We want to shoot it at this. Doug Liman. Thank you, Robert Battenbat and Marcus Y and John A.M. It was Doug Liman was the director. And they said, we've got a window here of time that we can make it work and do it. Do you want to come and do Edge of Tomorrow too? And Emily Blunt was like, guys, like 2 weeks ago, I signed a deal to do Mary Poppins. And we're shooting in that window, so we can't. And nothing has been heard about the possibility of a sequel ever since. Mary Poppins killed Edge of Tomorrow 2. Well, it wasn't Mary Poppins. I mean, Mary Poppins had already booked her. There was no, and then they came to her weeks after, say, hey, we want to shoot the movie in this window of time. And she's like, I'm committed. I just signed a contract. I got to go do Mary Poppins, which, I mean, she was a good Mary Poppins. Just the movie could have been better. So I would love to see a sequel to that too, Darren, but I think that ship has sailed. I don't think we're ever going to see a sequel. I hope we do, but I don't think we ever will, unfortunately. All right. Queese Williams writes, hey, John and crew, recently got married. Congratulations. Then went on a business trip and have been getting caught up on the show. Not sure if anybody suggested it, but what about Dave Bautista's Etrigan, the Demon? Nah. Curious to hear thoughts? Nah. I have no interest in DC. I mean, they may do it. It's James Gunn. He's got a wild imagination. I got no interest in DC going, especially in the first few years that they're doing it, going into, the spiritual and the demonic and all that kind of stuff. It's like, can't we just have good guys punching bad guys in the face for a while? I mean, and honestly, the wild, I mean, Etrigan would be a CGI character probably, so it really wouldn't matter at that point who you had doing that. I think at this point in his career, Dave Bautista doesn't want to be a CGI character. I think he would love to just be a character that he can play in a movie. So I don't know that that's something that he'd be particularly interested in. And I gotta be honest, seeing that character in the DCU, I mean, get there eventually. But for me, nah, man, let's just keep it a little more grounded. John, you're going to have a Superman movie as an alien who flies around and shoots lasers out of his eyes. And you want them to keep it grounded. I know. It sounds ridiculous, but let's keep it grounded by comic book standards, right? We understand that an alien will fly around and shoot lasers out of his eyes and thunder out of his ass. But I mean, let's keep the demons in hell for a little while, shall we? I mean, that's just me. All right. Let's now go over to the live questions you guys have been sending in here. By the way, I just want to point this out. If you are somebody who sent in a tip link question in the last, say, 2 hours or so, you probably didn't see your question get answered because we put together that document of all the tip questions that came in about 2 hours before the show starts. So if you sent in a question to the tip link after that, don't worry, your question is still there. We got it. It'll be answered in the next open mic. All right, let's get over to the live questions being getting sent in here, shall we? CR writes, you know why I like NCIS? Oh, by the way, guys, I have turned off the super chats, just so you know at this point. You know why I like NCIS? Besides the great characters and stories, they actually fill their goddamn cups with actual liquid. Other shows take notes. Little things like characters holding glasses very rarely actually have liquid in them. Or here's the thing that always gets me. I got to go down to City Hall. Okay. And there just always is a big, wide open parking spot right in front of City Hall. And they just drive, or right in front of that busy office building in downtown. You just always pull right in. Just little things like that bother me too, CR. All right. Next up, we've got Connor Dorian, who writes, according to the Hollywood Reporter, apparently Spyglass Entertainment doesn't need Jenna Ortega or Neve Campbell because they are too cheap to pay them what they are worth. Well, here's the thing, Connor. Everybody, we're all guilty of this. I'm not picking on you, Connor. We're all guilty of this. I always say this. Everybody's an expert on how other people should spend their money. Don't you find that's true in life? And we're all guilty of it. Everybody is an expert on how other people should spend their money. So here's the thing. I want to remind everybody that as much as everybody knows the Scream name and the Scream franchise, very few people actually go to watch them. Right? Let me bring this up here. One second. So very few people actually go to watch the Scream movies. Okay. Let me bring this up here we go. Let me see if I can get this on screen. I'm not 100% sure I'll be able to. There we go. Okay. Just want to remind everybody of this. No Scream movies have made $200 million. The number of Scream movies to make $200 million is none. That is the number. None number. None Scream movies have even made $200 million. Hell, one failed to even make $100 million. These are not highly profitable movies. These are not movies that flood the movie theaters with moviegoers. They're just not. I mean, we've talked a lot recently about how the Marvels is an absolute bomb. And granted, it costs a lot more money to make the Marvels. 100% absolutely. You don't need to remind me of that. Absolutely. But just for comparison's sake, as much of a big bomb as the Marvels is, not one Scream movie's had as many people go to see it. Right? The reality is, Jenna Ortega today has a higher asking price to appear in movies than she used to. That's understandable. Her star has risen, so her asking price has gone up. But if you're a movie like a Scream franchise, where you're only going to make total $150 million, maybe, at the box office, minus all of your, number one, your marketing costs, which would probably be $20-30 million, minus the cut that the theaters keep, which if your movie makes about 150 million, that means the theater's keeping about 50 million of it. So now all of a sudden now your movie that made $150 million, well, only really made about 60, 40, somewhere around there. Then you got your production budget of the movie, all that kind of stuff. The reality is this: when you're making a movie that is only going to make $150 million at the box office, you can't pay somebody $7 million to be in your movie. You can't pay somebody $5 million you can't pay somebody a number that literally will represent about a full 10% of what your actual return on the movie is going to be. And listen, like the Neve Campbell situation, where Neve Campbell has been doing the Scream movies forever and ever and ever, and she felt like her name brand with the thing deserves more. I respect that. If you see me talk about this, I totally respect that. But if I'm a Scream franchise producer, I'm like, I would say, I acknowledge you deserve more. But our franchise is so small, we can't hand out money like we're making a Harry Potter movie, or we can't hand out money like we're making a Hangover movie, or we can't hand out money like we're making a $300 million movie, when really it's only going to probably be 120 million, 130 million, 150 million if we're lucky. We can't pay that kind of money when your movie is going to make that little at the box office. I remember, here's a true story, and I'm not going to mention names, okay, but this is 100% true story. There was somebody, but this is back in the AMC days when I was running AMC Movie Talk. There was somebody who very much wanted to be a part of what we were doing. And I started to have negotiations with the person and talking with them and working out, seeing what we could do. And the problem is, this person had a television background. And on television, they were accustomed to making a certain amount of money. Now, they certainly weren't looking for more than that from me, but they wanted at least something from me that was comparable, not more than, not even equal to, but something comparable to what they were making on TV. And I had to just sit there and tell them and say, look, I acknowledge that you are accustomed to making X amount of money. And I acknowledge that you're probably even worth that money, but not here, not on the YouTubes. We don't generate that kind of money with our YouTube's channel, with our little videos. Like, we're pretty big in the movie space on YouTube, but we is still little. We don't have that kind of money that we can hand out. Like, you're coming from a different game. And if you come into this game, you're going to get paid by this game's scales. Like, if I had been running a television network the way I was running AMC, I would have been making $2.5 million a year. Spoiler alert, I was not making $1.5 to $2.5 million a year when I was running. So I had to explain to this person that I'm not saying you're not worth it. I'm not saying you don't deserve that kind of money, but we can't give you that kind of money because we are just not to that same scale that you're accustomed to when you're on TV. Neve Campbell and Jenna Ortega, I think, are just priced out now, right? It's not that Jenna Ortega or Neve Campbell aren't worth that much money. It's not that Neve Campbell and Jenna Ortega maybe don't even deserve that kind of money. It's just that we're in a game here where our movies make anywhere between $90 and $160 million. We can't give out paychecks as if we're making $300 or $400 million movies. We can't do that. And if Spyglass wants to do that, that's their prerogative. But I think you have to be sticking your head in the sand not to acknowledge, oh yeah, a movie that might only make like $105 million, which is totally possible if they make another Scream movie. You can't be paying somebody $8 million to be in that. That's unreasonable. And really, Queen puts it best. Who really cares who's in a Scream movie? They have turned over the cast in Scream. Brought in brand new characters all the time. They usually had a core, your Courtney Cox's, your Nev Campbell's, but I mean, Scream isn't exactly a franchise where listen, a lot of people said Scream will never work if Nev Campbell isn't going to be in it. If Nev Campbell isn't in this new one, it's never going to work. And guess what? It made about the same amount of money as the last one that did have Nev Campbell in it. Scream's not a franchise that absolutely has to have, that people generally really care deeply about who's in it and who isn't. And again, I go back to this. The reality is Scream is a franchise that not a lot of people go see in movie theaters. And I don't mean that as any disrespect to anybody who's a big Scream fan, not at all. I'm just saying the numbers are the numbers. The reality is people don't go out to the theaters in any big numbers to go see the Scream movies. So you can't pay as if they did. Anyway, that's just that. Thanks for bringing it up, Connor, though. I do appreciate you bringing up the topic, my friend. All right, let's keep going here. Next up, Connor also writes, the original cast is returning for the Black Phone sequel. I talked about that a little bit on the John Campea Show earlier today. And I am very curious. Once I got to fix this. I'm having problems with my mic arm a little bit. How on earth are you bringing Handsome Hawk back? How are you bringing Ethan Hawke back? I'm not going to spoil the end of Black Phone, but that's going to be a pretty tricky thing to bring back Ethan Hawke. So I hope it's not a prequel, because I you know me, I'm not really big on prequels, but I loved the first film. I will see the second film. All right. Miguel Zayan writes, it sends in a $20 super chat. Thank you, Miguel, who writes in, did you guys see the rumor a month ago that MCU apparently have reached out to Alfonso Cuarón? There was no truth to that, by the way, to helm Secret Wars. I'm aware this is a long shot, despite him having an experience in big franchise. Potter, I still like Coogler. Yeah, as far as I understand, there was no truth to that. Look, the reality is this. There is a Marvel rumor that literally comes out. There's 5 of them a day that come out. I don't talk about them on my show. I don't talk about 95% of them. I will talk about a couple where I have personally heard that there might be some truth to it. And so those will bring them in and we'll clearly lay it out and say, hey guys, none of this is confirmed, blah, blah. But just for the fun of the discussion, let's talk about this. But 95% of these rumors, I just ignore. And as far as I understand, the Alfonso Cuarón thing was totally fabricated, wasn't true. As far as from what I've been told, at any rate. But he is the kind of director that I think Kevin Feige would love to work with. But he's a he's an Academy Award winning director, and he's not going to be given control over whatever film he comes in to do in the MCU. Kevin Feige gets control over what movies happen and how they happen in the MCU. And I don't think Alfonso Cuarón's the type of director who would do that. Same way that I don't think Christopher Nolan would, to be honest with you. All right. Thanks a lot for that, Miguel. And thank you so much for supporting us on that level, man. I really appreciate that, dude. All right. Next up, Miguel again writes in and says, out of these DC series, which one are you most excited for? Paradise Lost. That's the Wonder Woman, Themyscira Island one, which will not have Wonder Woman in it. Booster Gold, Jody Hill attached. Do you mean Jonah Hill or is it Jody Hill? Anyway, Lanterns, which apparently has Ozark writer attached. Hope they all live up to HBO standards. Okay. I'm not that excited about Booster Gold. No disrespect to anybody who's a Booster Gold fan. I'll just be honest with you. I'm not all that interested in it. It can easily win me over. I wasn't interested in Squid Game either. And look how that turned out. I am quite interested in Paradise Lost. About the Isle of Themyscira prior to Wonder Woman being around. Just that whole thing is fascinating to me. But the one I am easily the most excited about is Lanterns, especially if you got the guy connected to Ozark connected to it. That's the one that for me by a mile is the most intriguing one for me. That's the one I'm really intrigued by. All right. Next up, Bobby Jackson writes, hey, John, have you seen what Iman Vellani said about what it would take to get the MCU back to Endgame hype levels? If so, what are your thoughts? No, I haven't. Hey guys, listen, if you're going to write in a question like that, at least give me an idea about what it is she said, because you wrote in this great question, but because I have not seen the interview or read the interview in question, all I can say is, no, I haven't seen what she said about it. So unfortunately, I cannot comment on whatever it is she said about it because I don't know what she said, Bobby. Sorry about that, man. But again, I haven't seen it, so I don't know what we're talking about, unfortunately. All right, thanks for writing in anyway, Bobby. Appreciate you, man. All right, next up, Bobby writes in again and writes, surprised you don't care about an X-Men versus Avengers movie. They could bring back the OG Avengers and OG Hulk. I'd love to see a Hulk or Cap versus Wolverine fight at the center of a great story. But what great story? See, that's the question I have. What great story? I mean, the MCU has already done Civil War, right? They already did the thing where they set it up where you get all these heroes with a big philosophical divide and it pits them one against the other and all that kind of stuff. And I don't see why you'd go back to that. You'd just be going back to that well again, to be honest with you. I'm not interested in it. To honestly, at this point, it would just be a gimmick. And gimmick isn't necessarily a dirty word. Gimmick can work. But like, what story? What story can you do on the big screen that doesn't just ring hollow or doesn't just feel like another just Civil War round 2? And by the way, one of the reasons that Civil War worked in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is because they had like 10 years of us getting to know all these characters and getting to know their stories and understanding the nuance and all that kind of stuff. And so when Ant-Man is geeking out about meeting Captain America, I mean, there's meaning to that. There's meat to that. And I just don't, right now we haven't even had X-Men in this universe. So X versus X, I don't get excited by those really. That doesn't sound like a rich story to me. It sounds like a YouTube video to me. You know, it sounds like a YouTube video that some CGI animator puts together at this 10-minute video of Avengers fighting X-Men, and maybe it'd be a great video, but I can't get excited about the movie. Now, ask me that again in 5 or 6 years, right? 5 or 6 years from now, maybe they have something in place where that would become very intriguing, right? So let's have that conversation again in a couple of years. For right now, not really interested, but that's just me. All right. Next up, let's see. Raymond Verrata writes, did you see Anya Taylor-Joy first pick as Furiosa? I did. The whole gold thing. Yeah. Looked really good. Apparently there is now a trailer out. I haven't watched it yet, but we will definitely talk about it on the John Campea Show tomorrow. But I thought the picture looked really kind of intriguing, especially with the arm. The arm was so cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing that trailer, Raymond. All right, next up. Bobby Battenbat writes, did you see Variety's actors on actors lineup? Cillian Murphy and Margot Robbie is one. Can't wait to see what they have to say about Barbenheimer. Listen, I am always really fascinated by that actors on actors series where you got two prime A-list actors interviewing each other. I love it. And when I saw that they were going to have Murphy and Margot Robbie, the yin and yang of the Barbenheimer phenomenon, I thought, that's perfect. That is absolutely perfect. So I always get a kick out of watching those interviews, but I will particularly be interested in this one. A great deal, Rob. I'm very, very interested in that. Okay, guys, listen, we still have a number of questions still to get to, and we're going to get to them. But before we do, we're going to take another just quick moment and thank another sponsor of today's episode, my mobile service provider, and they should be yours if you're interested in saving money, my friends at Mint Mobile. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of today's video, Mint Mobile. Signing your life away to a big wireless provider is kind of like being trapped on a roller coaster from hell. Sure, it looks like fun at first. They probably even threw in a free phone, but now you can't get off. Month after month of insane bills and unexpected thrills, like overages and surprise fees. If that sounds like your current big wireless plan, it's time to get off the ride with Mint Mobile. For a limited time, wireless plans from Mint Mobile are just $15 a month. That's unlimited talk, text, and data for just $15 a month. You guys know before I came to Mint Mobile, I was paying triple what I am paying now on the standard big wireless plan, and I will never go back. All plans come with unlimited talk, text, and high-speed data delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. Use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number along with all your existing contacts. To get your new unlimited wireless plan for just $15 a month and get the plan shipped right to your door for free, go to mintmobile.com/Campea. That's mintmobile.com/Campea. mintmobile.com/Campea. Cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/Campea. And thank you to our friends at Mint Mobile for sponsoring today's episode. All right, guys, with that down, let's get back to the last bunch of questions you guys have sent in here, shall we? We're going to pick things up with Fangblaze71, who writes, in my opinion, Iron Man 3 is the most overrated MCU movie. I love it, and to me, it has one of the best final battles in the MCU. All right, I'm going to go out on a limb here, Fangblaze, and take a wild guess that what you meant to say was the most underrated movie. I think that's probably what you were trying to say. I don't dislike Iron Man 3 the way I dislike Iron Man 2. I don't dislike Iron Man 3. I think it's I got to get a new office chair because this one is starting to sink every time I sit in it. Very slowly, but surely I start to sink in my chair. I think they had a number of very interesting things in it. I love the PTSD angle of it, right? The PTSD angle of it was really cool. I love that they had that in there. But I still think Iron Man 3 is lower tier MCU. Not the bottom, not as bad as Thor, Dark World, not as bad as Iron Man 2 and stuff like that. I still think it's lower tier. But see, that's the great thing about movies, man, is that they all hit us in different ways. And the strong parts of Iron Man 3 made a bigger impact on you than they did on me. And I think that's great that you enjoyed it. I'm glad you find it to be underrated. It's rated right around where I think it should be rated personally. But I mean, again, that's just me. I love that you love it, man. I love that and again, you know what? The Ben Kingsley, I love the Ben Kingsley stuff in it. I really do. So yeah, there you go. I'm glad you brought it up, man. All right. Next up, we've got Fangblaze also writes, I've never played Fallout before, but the set picks alone make me want to try it. Might have to buy it soon. I have only ever played, what was the one again? I keep forgetting the name of it. The only Fallout game I've played was the mobile game where you're in the Fallout shelter. Was it literally called Fallout Shelter? I can't remember. Anyway, that's the only Fallout game I've ever played. Yeah. Odgered is saying, yeah, it's called Fallout Shelter. There you go. So I did know it. But I never played the other ones. And Dennis Zen loves those games, loves the Fallout games. I think you know what? I'm in the same boat as you, Fangblaze. I just might pick up one of the games. Let me ask you guys in live chat right now. If I'm going to go home, I got a PS5. If I'm going to go home and pick up a Fallout game to play, what's the best one for me to get? What is the best one for me? Directed by Vince Flores is clearly very late coming into the stream. Yes, we know the Furiosa trailer dropped. We discussed that already. We know it was here. You can always tell when somebody's a little bit late to the stream because they're like, guys, just dropped, when somebody, like 15 other people talked about that 25 minutes ago. But we appreciate you wanting to let us know, Vince. We appreciate you wanting to let us know. I'm seeing a bunch of people saying Vegas. New Vegas. Everybody's saying New Vegas, New Vegas, New Vegas. New Vegas or 4, New Vegas, New Vegas. All right. So I guess I'm going to be going home and trying Fallout New Vegas. All right. Next up, we got King Daddy Goat, who writes, Eagles versus Niners. Who do you got, John? Niners 34-24. You know, I'll be cheering for the Niners, but the Eagles this year have just found a way to win. Every game they've just found, I mean, except for the one, obviously, but they've been in tough games. They've been in close games, and every time, like the last week's game against Buffalo, I think showed a lot of their character. They just find scrappy ways to win. San Francisco has looked great at times this season, but then they had that, what was it, like a 2 or 3 game skid where it's like, what's going on here? So they can show up and then not show up. So for now, I'm going to go with the Eagles. I'll be cheering for the Niners, but I think the Eagles are going to win that game. All right. Hars K writes, watch out, Tay-Tay. The Rolling Stone concert tickets went on sale and crashed AARP's ticketing site. Yeah, listen, man, the Stones are still going, dude. The Stones are still going. But probably, like, I'm not a Beatles guy, but I am a Rolling Stones guy. I think Rolling Stones is probably the greatest rock and roll band of all time. But they're still kicking it, man, and they're still going. Mick Sound, by the way, Mick sounds terrible live. Mick Jagger now sounds terrible live. But you know what? Nobody cares because it's the Stones and you're seeing the Stones live. So that's all that really matters to people. All right. Jake Vidmar writes, I'm still confused as to why the WGA and SAG didn't start negotiating till weeks before the contract did. Oh, me too, man. One point I heard is that they use the last minute nature as leverage and negotiating power. What? Listen, Jake, this is one thing I will never understand. Like, I remember when I was talking to members of the DGA, the members of the Directors Guild, I'm like, why were you guys able to get a deal done when these other unions hadn't? They're like, because we're not stupid, because we started negotiating like a year ago. So when it came down to crunch time, we already had most of the major things figured out and settled, and we got a deal we liked. So yeah, why SAG and the WGA, and by the way, the AMPTP is not blameless in this either. Why those organizations didn't get together a fuck ton a lot earlier than last minute to even start the negotiations? This is all shit you could have figured out 6 months ago, and then nobody would have had to go on strike. People wouldn't have lost their businesses. People wouldn't have lost their homes. It's just one of those things that's totally within your power. Start negotiations a year in advance so that by the time it comes time that your old contract is ending, you got to get a new one done. You've already done most of the negotiating. All of this hardball stuff that the producers and the actors, the producers and the writers were doing is stuff that should have been happening much sooner and much earlier. I'll never understand that. There is no logic to it. It's just people being stupid. But, that's what people are. People are stupid. All right. Next up, Hanzala Khan just sends in a super chat to be supportive. Thank you so much, Hanzala. Appreciate that. Alex writes, watched Highlander for the first time after you kept talking about it. No joke. Saw Clancy Brown at the store the next day. Super nice dude. That is awesome. You know what? I've been very lucky in my career that I have got to meet just about everybody. The only person that I've often said that I wish I could have met that I have never met is Steven Spielberg. I've met Steven's mother. I got served lunch by Steven Spielberg's mother years ago, actually. But I've never met Steven Spielberg. But you know what? Clancy Brown is another dude I've never met. One of the stars of two of my all-time favorite films, Highlander and Shawshank Redemption. I will always be a big Clancy Brown fan. I'm so jealous, Alex, that you had a chance to meet him. That is awesome. All right. Next up, Joshua Ramsur writes, hey, John, how tall are you? I'm about 6 feet tall. I think I'm just a hair. I think if I pulled out a tape measure, I'm probably just a hair under 6 feet. So if I were to write it on an official thing, probably 5'11 and a half. I'll go officially 5'11 and a half. That's probably where I clock in at. All right. Next up, we got Jake Vidmar who writes, also, the doc on the Harry Potter stuntman is incredible. Helps you put life into perspective. Highest compliment. Yeah, I didn't even know about this thing. Somebody wrote in earlier today on the John Campea Show and talked about this documentary on HBO Max about a stuntman on the Harry Potter movies who got paralyzed on the job, like from doing stunts. And I think it's called The Boy Who Lived is the name of the documentary. I had never even heard of it, but now I'm dying to see it. So thanks for giving me that heads up on that, Jake. All right, next up. Emilio writes, do you think Reynolds would be willing to be the new Stan Lee cameo as Deadpool in the MCU? It would be fitting of him. No. We had this discussion before, not long after Stan passed away. Stan Lee, those cameos only work if it's Stan Lee. Nobody cares about anybody else doing a quick little cameo, right? It's Stan Lee. It's Stan Lee. There is no other Stan Lee. There is no other replacement for Stan Lee. There's nobody else to be that. That little quick cameo bit in all the different movies, it only works if it's Stan Lee. Otherwise, it's just kind of stupid. Like, why does Ryan Reynolds pop? And I love, you know me, I love Ryan Reynolds. Thank you, Mint Mobile. I love Ryan Reynolds, good Canadian kid. But why is Ryan Reynolds popping up in this? What does Ryan Reynolds have to do with the Fantastic Four? What does Ryan Reynolds have to do with Spider-Man? What does It only worked because it was Stan Lee. You don't go out and get somebody to replace that. it was only a Stan Lee thing and it can't be anybody else. So I would say absolutely not. They 100% should not do that. All right, next up. Christopher writes, as a content creator, how do you handle other creators that try to start drama with you? I'm going through that now. Thank you, John. I always, in my entire career, I've always had people try to start drama with me. Constantly. And the only way I have found to deal with it is ignore it. I just ignore it. There have been 1 or 2 times in my career where I failed to follow that rule. Over the past 15 years, there have been 1 or 2 times that I failed to follow that rule. And I always regret it, because it's just stupid. It's stupid. Look, at the end of the day, my basic philosophy is this. I may be important enough, or let me rephrase. You may, for some reason, think I'm important enough that you need to talk about me. But I don't think you're important enough that I need to talk about you. And frankly, I'm not important enough that you should be talking about me anyway. I'm a fucking nobody. I am a nobody, tiny little YouTube channel dude on here just talking about what I think about movies. But hey, if I live rent-free in your head and I'm important enough to you that you need to think you need to start drama with me because getting drama is a way to get heat and get some attention, and you think I'm the guy to do that for you, I think you're stupid, but God bless if you want to. But no, you've heard me say this before, but it's true. My dad said this saying once. I'm sure my dad isn't the one who came up with it, but my dad said this saying once and it's always stuck with me. When you get into a shit slinging contest, the only guaranteed outcome is that everyone smells like shit. When you get into a shit slinging contest, the only guaranteed outcome is everyone smells like shit. You all make yourselves look stupid and petty and whatever. And I just made the decision a long time ago that I'm not going to participate in that. And I don't care. Look, here's the thing. If somebody wants to start drama with me, whatever, but yeah, it's fine. Go do your thing. If that's what you want to be and that's what you want to do, go for it. I'm going to continue to go home to my house that I really enjoy with my awesome doctor wife, get on the phone and talk to some of my incredible family. I'm just going to enjoy my life. And if you want to spend your time doing that, well, God bless. Do it. Basically here, Christopher, what I'm saying is 100% ignore it. Just 100% ignore it. Why? Because anybody who's trying to start drama with you is not worth it. They are literally not worth your time. They are not worth your attention. And if they want to act like you're so important that you need to be talked about, let them. It's nothing but good for you. So anyway, I could be right. I could be wrong, but that's always kind of been my take. And like I said, the 1 or 2 times in my career over the last 15 years where I failed to follow my own advice, I've always really felt, I felt stupid about it afterwards. I've always regretted it. So just, do that. All right. Next up, where are we at here? We are at Joshua Remsor, and this is our final question today. He writes, have you seen Wendell and Wild? No, I have not. Or Nimona on Netflix. Now, I never even heard of it, to be honest with you. I think both are very good and told great stories, but it seems that nobody cares about animated movies / shows unless it's made by Disney. What do you think? Well, listen, you can't take away, especially when you're talking about Netflix. There's many great things about Netflix, right? I have been a Netflix subscriber for many years. But what they are the absolute worst at in the world is promoting the content on their own streaming service. Oh, sure, they'll have 1 or 2 things that they'll really give a lot of pump to, but with all the content that comes out, they do a truly horrible, horrible job promoting their stuff. I never heard of Blue Eye Samurai until many of you, our viewers, started saying, John, you got to watch Blue Eye Samurai. And I'm like, I've never even heard of that. It sounds silly. Blue Eye Samurai. It's going to be some little kid running around the sword saying, I'm the Blue Eye Samurai. Sounded stupid to me. I never even heard of it. And I watch Netflix all the time. Never heard of it. And then I had like 20 of you guys tell me, John, no, seriously, you really need to check out Blue Eye Samurai. So I went ahead and I checked out Blue Eye Samurai. Loved it. It's fantastic. It's so good. But I never would have even known it existed if it was just up to Netflix. So to be honest with you, Joshua, when you say Wendell and Wild or name out, as soon as you mentioned that it's on, because I remember thinking to myself before I even got to that part in your letter, I thought to myself, this is probably something on Netflix. That's why I've never heard of it. And then you said it's on Netflix. They are so bad at promoting their own stuff or even making people aware that it exists. They don't even let people be aware that their stuff exists. And so, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of good stuff that gets missed out on, but I am so grateful that so many of you told me about Blue Eye Samurai because it's really, really good. Very filthy too, but I you know me, I kind of like that stuff. Anyway, guys, that'll do it for today's installment of Open Mic. Thank you so much for being here and making this little hangout part of your day. Big special thank you to all of you guys who sent in questions. Number one, because you gave us great fun things to talk about. But number two, you supported this channel as you did it. And all of us involved with my entire YouTube channel, thank you guys so very much for your support. Make sure you guys come on back tomorrow and join us for the next installment of the John Campea Show. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the Furiosa trailer, which I have still not seen. We're going to talk about Godzilla -1 because I'm about to run out the door and go watch Godzilla -1 right now. And I'm looking forward to seeing all of you guys. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate you all so much. Love doing this. And we'll talk to all you guys later. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.